selesai, game over, the end. Indonesia's dreams of reaching the 2026 World Cup finals has officially ended. And it ended with a 0-1 defeat to Iraq through the only goal by Zidane Iqbal midway in the second half. With their fixtures completed and two defeats in as many games, they sit bottom of Group B with no realistic hope of reaching the top two. And with that, it marked the end of what has been an extraordinary journey for a Southeast Asian nation that has reached the furthest as far as World Cup qualifying journey is concerned. And once the dust on the agony of this defeat has worn off, the Garuda fans can look back and reminisce on what a journey that they have enjoyed over those months and years ever since they began their qualifying campaign a few years ago with the first qualifying round. And that ride from Shin Tae-yong to Patrick Kluivert has been nothing short overall of remarkable. And this is where the Southeast Asian fans, especially the Indonesians, can take tremendous pride of. But still, in the wake of that defeat to Iraq, questions have to be asked, especially to Patrick Kluivert and his coaching team, on what have they been doing in this phase of World Cup qualifying where every game would make the difference between continuing the dream or joining the rest of the Southeast Asia nations on the sidelines when the 2026 World Cup in North America kicks off next year. And unfortunately, it has been the latter. And this despite Kluivert ringing in 5 changes to the starting 11 that lost 2-3 to Saudi Arabia 3 nights ago in Jeddah. Among those who returned to starting lineup included Rizky Ridho, who should have been in the lineup against Saudi. A regular presence in the third round of World Cup qualifying, it was rather unfathomable that the Persija Jakarta centre-back was not really considered. And not only that, there were also tactical changes as well. Previously, they started with a 4-4-2 or 4-4-1-1 against Saudi. This time round, they started with a 4-2-3-1, and this despite having been proven that playing a back four does not exactly work for the Garudas. They recognized that after that third round qualifying campaign, the moment they lost 1-5 to Australia in Kluivert's first game in charge, and stuck with the back three all the way. But in this phase of World Cup qualifying, they insisted on a back four, which only Kluivert and the Dutch coaching staff can explain. And it took midway through the second half for them to finally go back to a back three in a 3-4-3, and as they desperately push for a goal without success, 2-3-5, with Jay Itzes joining the huge number of forwards in their desperate push forward. But still, they could not find a goal. And Iraq played to their game plan, even with their antics. And ultimately, the Garudas failed for a second successive game, and they are out. And it's pretty clear that at this particular phase of World Cup qualifying, every team who competes in that, they know that this is a second chance for them to qualify directly for the World Cup. And for some reason, Kluivert and his coaching staff chose this particular moment to mess up. It has already been proven that a back three does work a lot better, first under Shin Tae-yong, and subsequently for the rest of the third round qualifying campaign under Kluivert. But yet they still thought that the back four was more suitable given possibly the talent of the players that they had. But it totally didn't work out that way. And by the second half, Iraq had figured out completely what Indonesia were doing. That was even with a switch of formation. And the moment Iraq stepped up the intensity after halftime and kept pressing the Indonesians back, the inevitable goal would come. And come it did. That moment of brilliance from Zidane Iqbal, a former Manchester United trainee, that low drive down after fooling the defense, that was all that Iraq needed in a high stakes game. Iraq understood what was needed to qualify. Indonesia sort of understood, but did not fully comprehend what they needed to do. And as the game went on, as decisions went against them, as the fans got mad, everyone lost the plot. Only the Iraqis did not lose the plot. Graham Arnold did not lose the plot. Because Graham Arnold, having guided Australia to the last World Cup as their head coach, he knew what was needed in the international game. Kluivert has had international experience, but in Asia this is his first time, and unfortunately for Kluivert, it is now known, I think there is no need for the jury is out. It's pretty clear. His coaching skills are quite mediocre. Erick Thohir's plans for Kluivert to blend in with the Dutch-speaking contingent did not totally work out to the best effect. Otherwise, how do you explain the fact that in this game against Iraq, where actually you put square pegs on round holes, Rizky Rido, yes, he can play a right back, but his more natural role is in centre back. Why was he playing there? Then you had Verdong, who under Shin Tae-yong was playing at left wing back, and subsequently even under Kluivert for the third round of World Cup qualifying. And this is a guy who is now currently playing in the French top division. And you put him in midfield alongside Joey Pelopessi, with Tom Hay playing in the attacking midfield role. Then you got Ricky Kabuya, he was shafted to the left wing for his pace and strength, but contributed little in terms of gameplay in the first half and was rightly substituted at halftime. And you got their number 13 who is making his competitive debut in this high stakes World Cup qualifier for the first time. Mauro Zaustra, who currently plays as a forward for Dutch side FC Volendam, and where that is concerned, it's a very big gamble to throw this international rookie into one of the biggest match of his career yet. But throw him they did, and while his physical presence caused a little discomfort for the Iraqi backline, but he was less effective when it comes to moving in through the channels, and also I think when it comes to being the link up play between as the target man. So you can say that Indonesia did dominate possession in the first half. They did try to play through all those balls forward, but they barely had an effective shot that troubled the Iraqi goalkeeper. And with that, it is pretty evident that there was a plan, but it was not as effective or precise or concise as we would have hoped. It was more like in those 3 days, they were just roughly figuring out how to, I wouldn't say how to get the best out of the team, but they were figuring out a way in which they thought they could beat Iraq. Unfortunately, they were unable to. And with this round of the World Cup, it has been a colossal tactical failure for the Garudas, and for that, Kluivert and his coaching team must take total responsibility for this fiasco. Already against Japan, yes, Shin Tae-yong lost 0-4 at home. Kluivert could end up losing 0-6 to Japan the third previous round of World Cup qualifying to add on to the 1-5 loss to Australia. So it is pretty clear that when it comes to the bigger teams in Asia, especially not just your powerhouses in Japan or Australia, but also in the middle range teams in Saudi, in Iraq, when the real test came, the verdict is clear. Kluivert has flopped in all of them. He must go. He should not be left sticking around to lead the team through to the Asian Cup finals in January 2027 in Saudi Arabia, because to stick with the same team is like is insanity. And insanity is for the Indonesian football is to keep Kluivert on the job, because Kluivert's mission was to deliver Indonesia to the World Cup finals in North America. Now that mission was a failure. It's kaput, game over. And the desperation you can see in the players and Kluivert in trying to force a goal that could have kept them alive for 3 more days, at least for 3 more days. That desperation came with the long balls, came with the frustration in having to handle those play acting fake injury antics from the Iraqis, and also I think the decision making from Chinese referee Manning, who also lost the plot late in the game, especially from that moment when the Indonesian fans pelted plastic cups onto the pitch. And it took some wind away from their momentum in trying to chase for the equalizer. And Manning also lost the plot because to the Indonesians it's improbable that he can send off the Iraqi defender for second bookable offense, which is more likely something that the defender said to Manning rather than the foul that he had on Ole Romani in the box, and to have no penalty given. What possibly could have happened is there was a foul and Manning gave it the other way. And Manning never checked the VAR throughout this match, despite it being available. And the thing is, while the foul could be less conclusive, what was pretty clear is I think the tension and the language and the mood in the stadium got the better of the Chinese referee. And thus came those confrontations, those ugly scenes that continue to play out even after the final whistle. Not only was the Iraqi defender sent off on the field of play late in the match, Tom Hay was actually sent off after the final whistle for his verbal joust at him, for which by then you know that Manning really had no control of this encounter. And to compound to Indonesian woes, Manning actually gave 6 yellow cards to the Garudas. 6. As the game wore on, the fouls were less tolerated, and all Manning could do was just to keep reaching out for that that card to keep dishing out to any red shirt that he could see. Yes, I'm exaggerating, but you can see the point there. And that once that frenzy caught hold of the Garudas, both the fans and the players, they tried to find the equalizer, but the Iraqis had better tactical discipline. They had the focus and the cunning to frustrate the Indonesians. And with that, Indonesia's dreams of 2026 was done and dusted. And now looking forward for the Garudas after this World Cup qualifying journey, which by all any means has been extraordinary, has been, you can say, record breaking. The most number of points that a Southeast Asian team has ever won in the third round of World Cup qualifying, more than Vietnam and Thailand combined in this century, and also reaching the rapid charge fourth round qualifying to still be alive so many years, so many months after the start of their World Cup qualifying journey against Brunei. So, because by qualifying for the third round of the World Cup, by reaching the third round of the World Cup qualifying campaign, Indonesia have already booked themselves a place for the 2027 Asian Cup finals. So the Garudas still have the Asian Cup finals to look forward to in more than a year's time. So for the PSSI under Erick Thohir, what's next? It's clear that Kluivert should not be the guy to lead the Garudas into the Asian Cup finals. A new coach is needed. With Shin Tae-yong available again after his 65 days at Ulsan HD, is it time to bring him back to PSSI? Or is it better for Erick Thohir to find a different type of candidate without that big name, but with the capability of pushing the Garudas to the quarterfinals of the Asian Cup, having reached the round of 16 in Qatar in 2024? This is the puzzle that Thohir and his committee must decide on. Could it be the chance for, say, Alex Pastor to take over the reins? Could it be a chance for a different Dutch coach with some pedigree to convince this group of heritage players to stick together around and push them forward, to motivate them that at least reaching among the top 8 of the Asian Cup is the new goal for Indonesian football on the international stage? And what about the ASEAN Championship in between? They will probably need that coach to get the players ready, but Indonesian fans, be realistic. Don't expect the likes of Jay Sis, Kelvin Verdong, and Oli Romani to actually really feature in next summer's ASEAN Championship, which would have added a toll to their already packed domestic schedule for their various overseas European clubs. That is not what they have signed up for. So perhaps expect your Risky Riddles, Marcelinos, and your Kambuyas and your Sayuris to feature more in the biennial Southeast Asian Championships or the unofficial Southeast Asian World Cup. Then, ultimately, all said and all done, after all those months of thrills and spills, the highs and the lows, and so much drama in Indonesia's World Cup qualifying journey, it's in a way now back to the drawing board for PSSI. For this World Cup qualifying cycle, Thohir has invested much into bringing in a number of heritage players to play for the national team. Obviously, they play a pivotal role in them reaching this far in their World Cup qualifying journey that has ended. But Is this the way to go for the next World Cup qualifying cycle, which obviously will also combine with the Asian Cup qualifying cycle as well? Or should they project themselves in the medium term where they want to have more Marcelinos, risky riddles, who can be counted upon to play at a level that is above Southeast Asia? That means to be capable of playing in like the level where the third round qualifying campaign for the World Cup is, or even in the Asian Cup where you are often going to meet against your mid-tier and your top and mid-tier Asian nations that are outside of the region. How is PSSI going to plan this forward? Because if PSSI can build on this successful qualifying campaign by their standards, it's still a successful campaign despite ending in agony with the negatives that I mentioned. But if PSSI can build on that to produce more extraordinary local talents, the way that we saw in Marcelino's double against Saudi Arabia in Jakarta, Risky Rido being a regular feature in the third round of World Cup qualifying, and also the talent that Shin Tae-yong has tried to build up even with the young players during the ASEAN Championships, and also having your Sayuri twins and Ricky Kabuya being mainstay features, perhaps with the recall of Pramata Ahan and Asnawi Mangkualam back into the national team. The current local core is decent enough to at least compete at a higher level outside of Southeast Asia. I think the next step probably for the PSSI committee, although we do not know whether this is going to happen, is should they develop a new project where, having seen how Marcelino and the likes produce at this level, work with their vast population to see how many more of such players can be produced to the point where you can say if they plan it well and smooth, although you know the political nature it's a bit unlikely, they could at least provide a parallel to what Japan has been doing all those years in their route to become a world-class footballing nation from Asia. If PSSI can do that in the next 10 years, I think you can say that at least this particular World Cup qualifying campaign is that watershed moment where Indonesia can see that by playing at this level, it is possible, and they can dream bigger, provided that it's not a one-off with those heritage players. If PSSI can keep that focus straight on that path, I think the future will be a lot brighter for Indonesian football and for the Garudas. Otherwise, it will be like back to the status quo, just compete within the Southeast Asia level to make the pursuit for the elusive first ever ASEAN Championship title and all that. I think the ball now is in Erick Thohir's court, is in PSSI court, and I do wish Indonesian football and the Garudas the best, and my appreciation to them for such an exhilarating qualifying campaign. It was sad to see them exit the way they did in this phase of qualification, but still the memories, the joy they gave, especially those wins in the third round of World Cup qualifying where they defeated China 1-0 to keep their hopes alive for a few months longer. That memorable 2-0 win against Saudi Arabia, that was another highlight. So what more? It has been quite a ride. The journey has ended, but the seeds for the new hope of Indonesian football has probably begun if the Indonesian football authorities aim and see that from this campaign what is possible.